sets the Dodge SRT-4 apart from your average pocket rocket? How about a heavy-duty 5-speed transmission, asphalt-hugging gas-charged struts, and a 215 horsepower turbocharged engine, making it the world's quickest production car for under 20 grand. How exactly did we pull this off? Let's just say, Papa was a rolling Viper.
Okay, I have a theory. It's a wild take. Don't judge me, don't beat me up. I think the internet ruined the sporty compact segment, and the Dodge Neon SRT is a perfect case study. Now, for those of you who were there a while back, I did a video probably about 10 months ago explaining how Dodge has a huge opportunity because the Neon SRT-4, when it came out originally, second to the Caliber, was a big freaking deal because around the time, especially in the early 2000s, for all of you who are Zillennials or Gen Zers, you may not know exactly what I'm talking about. But during the early 2000s, car culture was a huge thing, especially with Gran Turismo, of course, Fast and Furious, and in a lot of movies and television. But the biggest thing, especially for guys my demographic at that time, the sporty compact hot hatch segment was booming, and that was leading the way with the GTI as well as the Civic Si and WRX. The Dodge Neon SRT was kind of like the contrarian of them because nobody truly believed that Dodge, of all people, could produce something that freaking fun. But fast forward to today, we don't have anything like that. There is the Charger, which is the 4-door and the 2-door, and the Durango. That's pretty much it, which I was shocked to find out. But I want to explain how the internet has essentially ruined that and why Dodge doesn't see a point in doing that. And in today's video, we're going to get into that. What's up, guys? My name is Chris, and welcome to The Breakdown, where we talk about everything cars, news, and reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, as always, welcome the back. So, now you all know the Dodge Neon SRT-4 was a huge deal, and it was inspired by basically the Viper. And fast forward into today, like I said before, Dodge has nothing of the sort, and I made a video about it because I really do believe that the sporty compact segment is still living. Maybe in the crevices of my mind, maybe it's nostalgia, I don't know. But I dug a little deeper, and I came to the conclusion that the internet is why we don't have those things, and I'm going to tie those two concepts together. If you're intrigued, and if that's something of interest to you, stick around and stay tuned because you are now watching The Breakdown. Now, before I get started, of course, you all know that Brake Spark is a thing. If you are in the market for a car and you need help guiding through the process and you really want to get the best deal possible, give me a shout out on my link below and get started today, and I'll make sure that you get the best deal possible on your next car. With that being said, let's go ahead and continue with the video. Anyway, so the Dodge Neon SRT came out back in 2003 to 2005. Now, it was in conceptualization around 1998, and Tom Gale, he went to the SEMA show and he was impressed by all the things that could be done to the Dodge Viper. And so of course he got in touch with the Dodge team and he got a special development team, and of course that's how Street and Racing Technology came to be. Now, when it came out initially, it also had a sister car, which was the 2.4 liter Chrysler PT Cruiser. I know it's the old people car, but that thing scoop. But it had a 0-60 of 5.6 seconds according to Car and Driver. Now, it was only in production for about 2 years, and in its total sold about 24,000 units. I might be exaggerating, I might be under exaggerating, but you all know that usually with these things, there's some level of truth to it. The unfortunate thing about the Neon SRT was that while it was fun, sexy, I think it was sexy anyway, while it was a very attractive argument for a budget, compact, sporty idea, if you will, Dodge really couldn't hold on to it, particularly because of the issues that were going on in the background with Daimler Chrysler. Now, of course, you know, the Dodge direction was Dodge, Chrysler, and Jeep. All three of them were really in a whirlwind of problems because there was a lot of tension between the two companies. And I think as a casualty, the Neon was eventually replaced by the Caliber, and the Caliber took over the mantle. Now, unlike the Caliber, the Dodge Neon SRT-4 was a 2.4 liter turbocharged engine, and it was a manual exclusive. And the SRT Caliber was the same, but the difference was that it was a sedan, not a hatchback. The one thing I absolutely love about the Neon as opposed to the Caliber is that the Neon was true to form in the idea that it was, how did Ludacris say it? I don't remember. Act a fool? I think that's what he said. I don't want to be that cringy.
Don't let me get old.
But I guess I am old.
Well, that was dark.
Anyway, so the Neon was a sedan and it looked great, especially with the crosshair grille, and that was Dodge's signature and has been for quite some time. I think now with the new grille, it's a little different. The crosshairs are basically gone away, but back then that was a signature Dodge thing. And of course that grille translated over into other performance models such as the Charger, such as the Challenger, such as the Magnum, which the Magnum I think I did a video about that a while back as well. And the Magnum is kind of what I think the Dodge Caliber should have been, but I digress. In contrast, after Daimler Chrysler separated, and of course Dodge and Chrysler Jeep had to carry on, the Caliber took over the mantle of the SRT-4. Now, I also like the Caliber in the idea that it was a hatchback and it was a little taller, but it didn't have the same stance and aggression that the Neon had. Now, by comparison, the Neon was very mirroring of things like the GTI, the Civic Si, the WRX, and back then the Impreza was kind of one of those rare gems that if you knew, you knew. But the Neon itself was nothing to scoff at all. And so for today's standards to be going to 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds, and I know that 0 to 60 times aren't always what they're cracked up to be, but it was incredibly impressive that such a lightweight car could achieve those times, especially given that it was basically a economy sedan. Now, the Caliber, on the other hand, had a little more horsepower, and I mean by a lot, because it was 285 horsepower, but it also didn't have the same cadence that the Neon had, because I believe that a lot of the demographic who grew up with the Neon were more willing to buy the Neon as opposed to us being reintroduced to the Caliber, because a lot of us don't really remember it unless somebody deliberately points it out. Fast forward into 2007, 2008, there's a debacle between the Chrysler brand and Cerebras, which was a financial private investment firm. They take it over, and then they realize, oh shit, we probably shouldn't have done this. So now around 2009, Dodge has nothing of the sort. For those of you who know me very well, y'all know I love to make a Hellcat Scat Pack joke. Don't ask me why. Hellcat Scat Pack, Fat Pack, Fanny Pack. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Dodge Charger has held a very, very long reputation of performance at a reasonable price until you get to the SRT brand. And that is kind of the case point that I'm making, is that the SRT-4 versus the SRT-8 were two very different cars. Now, fast forward into today, we have nothing of the sort. We have quite literally the Durango, and we also have the Charger, 4-door and 2-door, which I still don't understand the nomenclature, but I digress. The thing is that the internet has essentially ruined any particular marketing demand that Dodge could even think to conceptualize. And I'm going to explain in a little bit further of how I came to that point. Now, the thing is that Dodge nowadays only has the 2-door and 4-door Charger as well as the Durango. But my point that I'm making is that I believe that the internet has actually ruined any desire Dodge has of making a compact, sporty vehicle. And I think that has resonated across the industry. Now, what do I mean by blaming the internet? Yes, the vicious internet, the one that exists and the one that constantly gives me hell because I can't figure out if I'm talking to a bot or if I'm talking to a person. But horsepower wars have been on the rise probably over the last 10 years, and I think we've kind of fizzled out there. But back then, 208 horsepower coming out of a 2.4 turbo was perfectly sufficient. Today, you would get clowned if you brought anything remotely of the sort with 2 in it. Because nowadays, we have to have 400, 500, 600 horsepower. And EVs didn't really help that either, because they gave us accessibility to that horsepower without actually doing any of the work that came along with it. One of the biggest tropes is that Civic Si is in fact slow. Now, it has always been a handler. It's never been a off the line, such as the raw performance of, the American cars that we used to know. But even with the Z24 Cavalier, which I think I'll make a video about that at some point, there used to be something very exciting. Like, there was nothing exciting about the Cruze. They didn't have a very special line that really said, oh yes, performance. And the Caliber is a byproduct of just transferring ownership. So I don't really count that as a part of the equation. But the Neon at its time was peak. The WRX at its time was peak, and not in a nostalgic way, in that we were okay with what they produced, and everybody knew that if you wanted more, you could squeeze that out. And not in the case that it was in the idea that it was sufficient, but more so in the idea if you wanted to squeeze more out of those engines, you could if you knew what you were doing. Now, everyone expects out the box Hellcat power. Otherwise, you're getting clowned and you're being turned into a meme. And I do believe that we have chased horsepower so much that we have forgotten fun. The Neon SRT at its time was budget fun. But my point remains is that the Dodge at its time, with the grille, with the wing, with the kit, with the like everything, brand identity was Dodge back then. And the Neon SRT-4 carried on a legacy of hot hatches and sporty compacts. And now everybody has to have 3-row SUVs and everybody has to have these monstrous horsepower cars. Otherwise, they don't want them. And everybody has to have luxury. And I think there is something to be said about practicality and fun all packaged into one, and us needing to be basically content. But I feel like there is a slot for Dodge to be able to bring that Neon SRT-4 back. And I think if they did it right, they would reestablish themselves not just as the Hellcat brand, but the performance brand. And I think now that we are in a space of EVs, this is probably one of the last times we'll get to get sporty compacts before they completely transition over into electrification. But I say all that to say, you guys let me know in the comments below how you feel about that. If Dodge brought back the Neon SRT-4, would you be willing to buy it? Also, do you feel like the compact sporty segment has died as a result of the horsepower wars, or do you think there's still space for the both of them? If you would like to help me support the channel, feel free to buy me a coffee. As always, I really appreciate you guys coming in and staying with me for this entire video. And until the next one, I will see you guys later.